And so this morning, we're very privileged to have two of the finest leaders Memphis has ever seen, who will be leading this conversation this morning, none other than our interim superintendent, Dr. Richmond, and Dr. W.W. Herenton. Come on.
At just 28 years old, Dr. Herenton became the youngest principal ever hired in Memphis, leading the very school he attended as a child. With a doctorate from Southern Illinois University and a fellowship focused on urban school leadership, he was named Superintendent of Memphis by 1979.
When I got to be a principal, I said, well, I don't want to stop my career being a principal. I want to be the superintendent. I was bold enough to think about being the superintendent of schools, even when I was 28.
His commitment to education set the stage for a lifetime of leadership. In 1991, Dr. Herenton made history, becoming the first African-American to be elected mayor of Memphis. And 12 years later, he did it again, becoming the first Memphis mayor elected to 4 consecutive terms. His tenure, ending in 2009, was a catalyst for monumental change across our city's social, economic, and physical landscape. Under his leadership, Memphis realized a 30-year dream, securing our first major professional sports franchise, the Memphis Grizzlies. Downtown Memphis transformed into the Mid-South's entertainment mecca, boasting state-of-the-art sports and entertainment facilities. Dr. Herenton's vision and courage empowered the people of this city and shaped the opportunities our students have today.
Let's give another big round of applause to our guest, Dr. W.W. Herenton. I was just sitting there talking to Dr. Herenton, and I was asking him if he had ever been invited to one of our principal institutes, and he shared no. And so I want him to know that we appreciate him being here today. Doc, we appreciate you being here today. And I also appreciate you all, as Dr. Whitelaw said, we've had a wonderful week of learning. I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up our week of learning than having someone who's been a trailblazer in our city to sit here and to give a master class on what it means to lead a school, but also to lead a city. I know there are several people here, and I'll tell Dr. Herenton, there's several of us who are sitting here who have always admired and looked up to him. I know I probably have Dr. Pointer and Dr. Hunter. We talk a lot about Dr. Herenton and his leadership throughout our careers, matriculating and growing as leaders for how, again, he set a path. We're going to sit here today, and I have a series. I have about 7 different subject areas that I'm going to talk to Dr. Herenton and ask him questions about, and I'm going to allow him an opportunity to pour into us today. But before I do that, I just kind of like to give him a few moments to say some things. Doctor, there's some things that you'd like to address the crowd with before we get started.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. This is truly a pleasurable occasion for me, and I want to thank Dr. Richmond, members of his staff, for extending this invitation for me to join you in this Principal Institute. You know, obviously, I'm having a great sense of nostalgia, just going back to when I was a young elementary school principal. And by the way, Dr. Richmond, my career started at Shannon School.
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that.
And you attended Shannon
Yes,
School.
sir.
So I told my daughter, I said, you know, I'm glad I don't have to do this for a living anymore. You got me up early this morning, and I got to come out to a workshop. You know how many workshops I've been through over 30 years of education, but I want you to know I'm deeply honored that you've given me this opportunity to come today. And let me say that Dr. Richmond has already shared with me some tough questions. I mean, I said, man, you invite me to come, and then you give me all these hard questions. So today is going to be an interesting session. And Dr. Richmond, if you will permit me just to, and I want to make just a just a few comments before we get into your questions. This young man, and obviously when you get my age and his age, he's young to me. You never know where destiny will take you. If someone had told me that a young lad growing up in South Memphis, no father in the home, being reared by a mother and a grandmother, being born in the Jim Crow era, in case, because most of y'all are very young, Jim Crow. That was a period of racial segregation. Neither my mother nor my father did not live with us, neither completed a high school education. So just coming from that background when Memphis was segregated, my role models, and he's going to ask me that later on, was Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis. They were boxers, and I later launched a career in boxing. We'll get to that in one of his questions. But anyway, I'm just so thankful today to be sitting on the stage with this young man who has taken on the leadership of one of the nation's largest public school system. And let me just say this. Dr. Richmond has assumed this leadership role in a very turbulent period in America. It's a very turbulent period when we look at the body politics in America, and also he's assuming this leadership role when the politics of education in our state is in a turbulent stage. So I want to say during our dialogue today, hopefully some of my comments will be able to inspire Dr. Richmond and to inspire the Board of Education that during these turbulent times it will, and to me, adversity builds character. So just stay focused on the mission. And your mission is to elevate the marginalized children. For we represent their future. And I want to say to the teachers, if there are any teachers in here, this is hard work. Principals, this is hard work. But always remember, it's important work. It's important work and it's hard work, okay? Children come from so many varied backgrounds and they come with so many built-in obstacles. But you as teachers and educators, I mean, we got to be passionate and devoted and committed to pulling the best out of these kids. And let me just say this. Those kids who are up here, the talents here, I don't know their backgrounds. But God has given these children that may come from the slums. He still gave them talents. He gave them abilities. And what we have to do as educators is to pull it out of them. Pull what is hard. You got to work to pull what is innately in them. Pull it out of them. And that's what effective teaching, and we're going to talk about the role of the principal. I've always said that the principal is the instructional leader. Yeah, that principal sets the tone, sets the climate for that school. And Dr. Richmond, I want to say this to you, that you've assumed the leadership, and I will admit this. I think I told you this personally. I always wanted to see this young man become the superintendent of the schools district. And I never told him this, but I saw some abilities, and I saw his passion, his commitment to raise the level of education for our children. So I wish him well, and let me tell you one other thing too, then I'm going to be quiet. I wanted to shout hallelujah when I saw, I think it was earlier this week, you mentioned somewhere that you didn't call it reorganization. In the old days, we called it reorganization. But when I heard you talk about going back to what we call a decentralized school system, where you're talking about having regional administrators. And I said, hallelujah. Let me tell you why I shouted hallelujah. And I'm going to say this, and I'm not speaking negative in anybody. I remember when I was superintendent, we had a decentralized school system. I had 4 areas, each headed by an area or regional superintendent. And we were able to focus, we drilled down on classroom instruction. And when I saw the superintendent who succeeded me, and I say this not out of disrespect, but I said I didn't say anything. That superintendent came in with a philosophy called school clustering. I said, oh my God, how are you going to cluster a large urban school system? And they dismantled what was working. Regional district, what your superintendent is talking about, is the way to structure the delivery. You got to drill down the classrooms. You got to empower principals and teachers. And the way you do it, it's got to be in a decentralized. So Dr. Richmond's background, he saw what worked. And when I saw that he's thinking of doing that for the school system, I said, this young man, he's headed on the right track. So I'll be quiet now.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that wise advice and those words of wisdom. And you talked a little bit about some of your traits, but what I'd like to know is what first inspired you to go into education and public service as a career?
That's a very, very good question, because my career path was not involved in college attendance. I think, as I told you, I wanted to be a boxer. And I don't know, and I got to tell you all this, I'm a very spiritual person. So throughout my dialogue, you're gonna see me talk about faith, and that's how I was raised in the black church and the impact that had on my development. But somehow or another, I became involved in Joe Louis. And we didn't have television when I was growing up until later on. I know that's hard to say. And when I visited my granddad, he had that old radio. You know, the big round radios and big knobs on it. You all are so young, you've never seen one like that. So every time Joe Louis would box, people in the black neighborhoods, man, they would put their radios on the porch. And we'd sit around to hear Joe Louis fight. And when Joe Louis won, we won. I'm talking about black people. When he won, we won. And then I watched Sugar Ray Robinson, flashy, talented, and when he won, we won. Then we had the Brooklyn Dodgers, which allowed Jackie Robinson to be the first black. So when the Brooklyn Dodgers played, we were around the radio. So my early models for wanting to break barriers started in the sports arena. So I won my first championship when I was 14, and then I won 4 additional championships up until I was 18. So I wanted to be a professional fighter. We didn't have any money. I just graduated from Booker T. Washington High School. It was in BTW, the Warriors. I have a few Warriors. So I graduated Booker T. Washington, and I needed some money to go to Chicago to turn pro. I didn't have any money. So I went to Memphis Furniture Manufacturing Company. That's on Dudley. You know where Elmwood Cemetery is? I was 18 years old, and I walked up on Dudley Street. It was an employment office near the street. So when I walked up there were about 20 or 30 men sitting on the ground. There was an employment office. So a white man, very rudely, came out And he said, I thought I told you boys, clear the property. We don't need anybody to work today. We're not hired. Well, I just walked up there. I didn't know that he told those men that. So I walked up there, and I saw the dejection, the dejected faces of those black men. And it was like I had a Damascus Road experience. When I walked past East Street, walked under that viaduct, it was like the good Lord spoke to me and said, Willie, you don't need to go to Chicago to be a fighter. Boy, you need an education. And I remember, Doc, I walked back and I told Mama, I said, Mama, I said, I'm not going to Chicago, I'm going to college. She said, what are you talking about, boy, you going to college? I said, yeah. I went over to Booker, Washington. A.D. Miller was a summer school principal. I had my transcript sent to Lemoyne College. And that was the beginning. Then in that day and time, educators were revered. Our coaches were strong men, our principals, Mr. Cash at Hamilton, Blair T. Hunt, Booker T. Washington, Floyd Campbell, and Mayoral. They were the leaders. Black principals were leaders, well respected. So I said, man, I'm going to get into education and I'm going to become a leader. That's where it started.
All right. Let's give Dr. Herenton a round of applause. We appreciate you giving us, sharing with us how you arrived at being at Lemoyne, and then we know you moved up through the school system, becoming one of the youngest principals at 28 years old. But I want to talk a little bit about when you became superintendent. What was one of the most challenging decisions you made as a superintendent, and how did you lead through that moment, Doc?
Well, let me take you just a little bit to get to there because I think it was important. Then I'm going to answer that question. Bear in mind, when I was coming through the system, it was a Memphis City school system then, and I was a teacher. I was 21 at Shannon, and Mr. Sam Helm was my principal. I loved him to death, and when I got to be a teacher, I said, well, I want to become a principal. So that meant I had to get a master's degree. So I went to Memphis State, and I got a master's degree. I was 23 when I got my master's. And then I said, well, I don't just want to be a teacher. I want to be a principal. So I said, I want to be a principal. And the school system had a management training program. It's called an internship. During those days, that was a pathway to become a principal. But it was so skewed that the system would select 10 interns per year. But they would only select 2 blacks, and there were 8 whites. So the possibility of you being among thousands of teachers being one of the 2. So it was very competitive for me to get into the management training program. So I was fortunate. I got into, and I interned in White Station, Kingsbury, Lincoln Junior High, Booker, Washington, Sherwood, Grahamwood. So I interned in those schools, okay? And typically what happened, and I see a lady here, I want to acknowledge her, very gifted. There's a lady here, you may not know her name, Willie Mae Slate. And I want to tell you about her in a minute. But anyway, she will remember the program. So when I came through the program, traditionally, when you come through the management training program, Dr. Richmond, you're promoted to an assistant principalship. But my performance was exemplary. And I did not go the route of an assistant principal. The management of the school system said, Willie Herenton's performance has been so exemplary, he's ready for a principalship. So my performance was, they said I was ready. Then at that time, no black man had ever become a principal of a predominantly white school. So there was no black leadership over predominantly white school. So my performance has been exemplary, you know. So I passed the test. I could get along with white folks. I did everything, and I was professional. I knew the social graces. I dressed well, and I was on top of my game. So they promoted me to principal of Bethel Grove School. And this was historic because my secretary was white, the janitor was white, the PTA president was white, the majority of my students were white. I had one black teacher. So this was, they said, if this can work in Memphis, Willie Herenton can make it work. So I know all this sounds strange to you all, but that's what it was like that. Everything was segregated. There were no blacks in the central office administration. So I wanted to tell you how I got there. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now back to your question. So you got to think about this. I had to envision becoming what had never happened before.
That's right.
I had to have the sense of self-worth to say, look, I can become a principal. So it happened. Then when I said, well, after I became a principal, I can become the superintendent. So I remember telling some of my colleagues that, they said, Willie, we don't know what you're smoking. And by the way, I never smoked anything. They said, you want to become the superintendent of schools? I said, yes. They said it never happened before. So I want to say to you, the young administrators, just because something has never happened before doesn't mean that it can't happen. So what happened was, and this is what we got to say to our students too, irrespective of where they come from. You know what I mean? They can come from the other side of the track, but the ceiling is as high as they want to work to reach it. They can hit it. So I said, well, I can become the superintendent of schools. Well, there became a storm. A storm came in our midst. And they're going to get to one of your other questions. You asked me who my role models were. 28 years old, I'm married. I got 2 children. I'm making $32,000 or $36,000 a year, which was a lot of money then as a principal. But then came the civil rights movement, Black Mondays. And you all have to read about this. Dr. Slade and I, we survived it. There were no black administrators at, what is it, 2597 Avery?
Yes, sir.
I think that's still the address. Y'all, now you've given the Hollywood address, I believe.
Yes, sir.
But when I came up, it was 2597. 2597 Avery was lily white. Okay. There were no black board members. So we were protesting. So at a church, Parkway Garden Church over on Parkway, Maxine Smith, who was a dynamic black female, was an activist. There was a Dr. Sugarman, very brilliant lady. I think she became the first black, she may have been the second professor at Memphis State University at the time. They called for all the black principals to meet at Parkway Gardens Church. And those 2 black women appealed to a group of black principals. There were about 70 of us then. And those black women said, look, you got to show pride. We got to convey to this Board of Education that they must open up the gate so that qualified blacks can be on the board and can be in administration. So those two women asked the black principals if they would participate in that movement. And I remember, because I got emotional, the Commercial Appeal had planted a newspaper reporter in the audience. And I gave a very passionate speech. Part of it came up in the Commercial Appeal. They said Willie Herenton, Bethel Grove principal, 28 years old, he urged the principals to participate in the boycott. So out of that march, out of 70 principals, there was only one that marched with the teachers during Black Monday, and that was Willie Herenton. So, but let me tell you what took place. I had to, I might get a little emotional when I think about this. I had to look in the mirror. I had Rodney and I had Duke, and they were like, 6 and 5 years old. I'm making $32,000 or $36,000 a year. I'm a rising star. I had been selected by the white establishment. I was a rising star. But all of a sudden, into my life became a defining moment. I could sit on the sideline and be a good boy. They done already identified me as a rising star, but my conscience, Dr. Richmond said, there were two black women, very courageous. They asked black men to stand up. And I remember I got up tearfully. I told those principals, I said, you know what? Many of you are old enough to be my father, and I wanted to look up to you, but I'm ashamed of you. And I walked out of the church, but I walked with the teachers. So at that moment, Dr. Richmond, that was a defining moment, and that was the first seed that I planted to becoming a man.
All right, all right. Would you say that was one of your becoming superintendent and that defining moment? Would you say that was one of your greatest accomplishments, or is there another great accomplishment that you'd like to identify?
Let's see. Well, when I became the superintendent, man, you think you got some hurdles. I got to talk to you about all of those. Some trials and tribulations. Well, first of all, Dr. Slade will remember, I had to fight to become the deputy because I was labeled a black activist. And, I forgot to tell you, I went to, I think you showed it, Horatio Alger selected me for the superintendent's training. I forgot to tell you that. Yeah, I became a Rockefeller Fellow. So I interned in Baltimore City, Maryland with the superintendent. I interned in the District of Columbia. And then when I finished, I was selected the top of my class out of the 10 interns, and I was the first Southerner. So I was well trained, man. The District of Columbia, man, that was a battleground. So I was working with the superintendent, and then I was trained in Baltimore City. So unlike any of the previous superintendents, I had a PhD. I had worked in tough urban systems in D.C. and in Baltimore. So when I came back home, I remember I wasn't coming back to Memphis. Miami, Dade County, which is where Miami is, they had offered me a job, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. And I remember, if there's some school board members here, they had a school board meeting in the District of Columbia, and I was doing my internship. So Carl Johnson, who passed about a year ago, was on the board. Maxine Smith was on the board. So they said, Willie, come over and meet with us at a hotel. They had a school board meeting. So I went over and met with Carl Johnson and Maxine Smith. And they said, Willie, you coming back home? I said, I'm not coming back to Memphis. I can't deal with that Southern mentality. I can't deal with that mess. I said, got all these offers. Man, Maxine Smith, Carl Johnson, they put me on a guilt trip. And they put me on a guilt trip, but God was in the plan. They convinced me and said, Willie. So Mr. Freeman was the superintendent. So they talked to him, and he said, I'm going to have a reorganization, and we'll make Dr. Herenton the deputy superintendent. So Memphis had never had a black deputy superintendent. So when Mr. Freeman, he got me back, and all of a sudden he couldn't get the votes. We had 6 whites, 3 blacks. Superintendent, I'd have moved my family back, and all of a sudden he didn't have the votes to make me deputy. I'm sitting there, Mr. Slate. Superintendent's embarrassed. And if you will remember, there was a protest march in 1995-97. The union, the ASME union, Jim Smith was alive then. Reverend Billy Cowles was a pastor at Monumental, and there were some black preachers. They marched in front of the Board of Education demanding that Willie Herenton, but we didn't get the votes. The concession was the white board members said, look, we will accept a black, but anybody but Willie Herenton. But the black board members said no. They wanted to select some of the older blacks who had been in the system. So they said no, it's Willie Herenton or nobody. So we didn't make it work that time. Then the second vote, we were able to get 2 whites to vote with the 3 blacks, and I became deputy. So I became deputy out of protest. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then I forgot to tell you, after I was deputy, the 4 district superintendents reported to me, 4 central office. I was a spokesman. I did all the media stuff for the district. Then when Mr. Freeman retired, they changed the rule of the game. They never had a national search. All of a sudden, I'm sitting there, heir apparent to be the superintendent. It's, we're going to have a national search. They had 50-some candidates from across the nation who wanted to be the Memphis superintendent, So I ended up getting into 12 finalists. Then I ended up the 5 finalists, okay? And this board that was majority white, and I'm writing a book. I told Dr. Richmond I'm writing my memoir. And writing this book, some of these episodes that are in my past, it caused me some anguish, but also it just conveyed to me the many trials and tribulations that you have to navigate through to become a leader in turbulent times, And I always said, for such a time as this, for such a time as this, it was my time. And I've said this to you. For such a time as this is your time. So it's always those trials. So then there was great protest, and I become the superintendent. 38 years old, the youngest of big cities in America, and I had to change the system. So all of the people that reported to me were old enough to be my parents. So I had to deal with the age system and had to respect them. So I'm their, I don't like the term boss, I'm their superordinate. They're the subordinates, I'm the superordinate. And, but I'm running things. So they always describe me as soft-spoken. I am soft-spoken. And easygoing, laid back. My daughter don't think I'm that way. She's looking at me now. I only rise up when the occasion calls for it. But what happened was, so I became the superintendent.
Doc, I can relate to that.
I know, I'll talk to you about that. See, when you told people don't play with me, they knew not to play with me. They knew not to play with me. So I had a look. They knew when I walked and stood, don't play with me. They knew that. So long story short, so when I became the superintendent, man, out of all of that protest and all of that, and then there was jealousy. I ran into jealousy and envy. Some of the board members turned, and then I had a personal issue that I caused that came up in my tenure that was taken all out of perspective, and so I came through a very turbulent period. And the city council was majority white. The mayor was white. So I was the advocate for a majority black school system that was underfunded. So I had to fight the mayor. I had to fight the city council for funding. So I became persona non grata for them. And this is what led me into my retirement. I knew they couldn't fire me. The Board of Education could not fire me. In Memphis, you talking about riots. I was that well entrenched with the black community, so they couldn't fire me. But here's what the political establishment said. And you and I are going to have a private conversation about the politics of education. We'll talk about that sometime. So what they said, the city council, look, y'all can keep Herenton, but if you keep Herenton, we will not fund your system. All of this is in the book I'm writing. Y'all getting some of it from my book before it's published. So what they said was, you can keep Herenton. So what I had to do was, in the midnight hour, I prayed to my God, and I had to deal with the reality that my presence was hurting the system. So I contacted the board's attorney, it was Ernest Kelly, and I said, Ernest, I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I would like to issue my resignation, and I said, I'm going to present to the board and to you a contractual proposal. Now, I was bold in what I said to him. I said, now, Mr. Kelly, I want you to understand this. This is non-negotiable. I said, what I'm presenting to you all is fair. I'm not going to debate it. This is what I'm requesting from the board and the superintendent. So I gave my contract. And that's what it was. And I retired. The school because I want y'all to know, my presence was hurting children and the teachers and the principal. That's when I left the system. No. But here's how God works. I didn't have in my blueprint to become a mayor. That wasn't even in my blueprint. In my last days, sitting in the office that you are sitting in now, 5 young men, 3 of them were Kappas. I think you're a Kappa, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. They came and met with me. I'm messing with him now, I'm sorry. They came to meet with me and they said, Dr. Herenton, we think that now's the time for Memphis to elect a black mayor. And they said, we want you to run for mayor. I said, but I don't want to be mayor. I don't like politics and all of that. So they said, would you meet with us? And we met at Piccadilly's in Whitehaven. And I turned them down. I said, I don't want to be a mayor, man. And they said we had a second meeting. And they put me on a guilt trip. And that's where you've heard of the People's Convention, and they talked me into that. And so the rest is history. I got into that, and we won the People's Convention, and then I ran for mayor. And I won, and I remember, man, I won the People's Convention, and all of a sudden, I remember I said to one of your Kappa buddies, I said, man, y'all got me into this. Now I got to run. The people have selected me. It was in July of 1990, and the rest is history. We won out of 250,000 votes. I won by 142 votes. It was the closest margin in the history of Memphis. And that's what happened, and that's the story.
So, Doc, what would you like your legacy as a leader to be?
That's a good question.
And also, in answering that question, first of all, what is your definition of legacy, and what would you like your legacy to be as a leader?
I think the legacy is what you leave behind for future or contemporary educators to emulate. What in your past resonates and inspires future leaders to break barriers and to never forsake the true mission of education? I know you like Horace Mann, and this was one of the guiding principles for me. Horace Mann said, "Be ashamed to die until you have won a victory for humanity." So I want, when I pass on and I'm out of here, and you look back and you said, Willie Herenton stood for something, he did something, and then I want you to remember that spiritual song, "Let the work I do speak for me."
All right. Doc, during Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement, there was a lot about equity. And so what does educational justice look like in 2025? And are we any closer to achieving it when you look back during Jim Crow and the Civil Rights era?
Well, let me mention this too, because I told some of the young people now that are striving for equity. It was in the Memphis City school system that the first affirmative action, I presented to the board that was majority white an affirmative action so that we could engage a minority firm, qualified minority firms, in the procurement of goods and services. And it was struck down. They voted on racial lines. 6 whites voted against it. 3 blacks voted against it. So I was out pushing for equity in the 1980s. But the climate was not conducive. So this mission of creating opportunities for blacks started in my tenure as school superintendent, okay? So equity was a battle in the 80s, and if you look at what is occurring currently, we are turning the clock back. You just got to, we're turning the clock back, and many of the barriers that my generation fought to break, they're being reversed. So that was a battleground, was creating a level playing field. The other one was, and I see many women that are here today, there were no female principals, basically, other than, I remember Mrs. Slade, Mrs. Harry Simon, Mrs. Shannon, just a few women principals. And it was unheard of for a female to become a junior high or a high school principal. Well, I thought it was ridiculous that we were going to judge leadership on the basis of gender. So I broke barriers and I promoted women to high school principalships. And I remember, some of you will remember Sarah Lewis, and I remember people kept questioning my judgment. Sarah was an outstanding principal. I watched her. She was president of the Principals Association. And when I reorganized, I promoted her from an elementary school principal to assistant superintendent of curriculum. So, quantum leaps. But what I saw in her, I saw the intelligence. I saw the leadership. I saw the courage. I saw the vision. And I brought her in over a lot of men who were white and black. And she performed courageously. And those were the days that, I'm just simply telling you this, part of my legacy was breaking barriers and never forgetting the marginalized and never forgetting people that were locked out of the system, that if I had not created the opportunities, they weren't going to get them. So hopefully I've answered that question too.
Yes, sir. Two more questions, Doc. Two more questions. One is really kind of a student-centered question. What do you feel that Memphis students need more from their leaders right now?
Well, first of all, let me just say this, Dr. Richmond. I was one who believed in making the investments in professional development. To me, professional development, man, teachers, principals. I mean, I hired consultants. I did a contract with the College of Education, University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She will remember. I had brilliant scholars. We always took the best and research on how children learn, the effective schools movement. So I became kind of a national figure as superintendent. So I was able to bring in the best. And principals had to go. I wanted to make sure that principals were effective leaders. So that meant a principal had to know curriculum and instruction. They needed to know what effective, when they visit classrooms, they needed to know what to look for. How do you help to impair teachers to become better teachers? How do you do team building? So I invested a lot in that. And let me tell you what we had to drill into teachers and principals, having high expectations. Man, you got to have high expectations. And the reason I believed in it was because looking at my background, man, coming up from nothing. And just because I was impoverished economically, it didn't mean I was impoverished intellectually. So the children that you have, they may not have daddies in the house. They don't have welfare and what do you call them, EBT cards. They may be all of that. But you have in those classrooms, you have diamonds in the rough. And the teachers, and I want to say to the teachers, it's hard work. It's hard work. Some of these parents are difficult to deal with. These kids are difficult to deal with. In schools in the old days, Dr. Richmond, when we had fights, they were fist fights. Now you got kids coming in with guns. They're carjacking. We didn't have the drug scene and all of that. So the cohorts of students and parents, and then we had teachers. I'm not speaking disparagingly. The colleges of education were strong in teacher preparation. I have no idea of the quality of teachers that are produced today because I'm not in the classrooms. So I'm simply saying invest heavily in professional development. And I want to say this before I leave too, Dr. Richmond. I applaud you for looking at breaking your district into regions. And if I may suggest this, sir, those appointments that you make at your regional administrators, they're critical. Man, those they're critical. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
The people
Yes, sir.
that are over those regions, critical,
Yes, sir.
critical.
And in closing, Doc, what keeps you inspired even now after decades of impact? What keeps you inspired?
That's a good question, too. People want me to sit down. old folks used to tell us, and say, you sit down, you get down. Well, some of you, if you go down on the river, and some of you, you see me down there, I'm walking 2 miles. Anybody in the audience that ever see me down on the river? I'm like, oh, you do. Who's that raising their hand?
Board Member Coleman.
Oh, that's the board member, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you what. Like I was down there, I don't care what kind of cap I put on and shades. I think it's my profile. People identify me. At 85, I'm blessed. I was telling the superintendent I'm writing my memoir, and it started out being a trilogy. So I think once you keep your cognitive skills sharp, and as you age, you're going to have some physical decline. So I've been blessed, and I try to stay relevant, just stay relevant. And I'm passionate about life, and I think God still got work for me to do, man.
Yes,
That's
sir.
it.
All right. But, Doc, I want to thank you for being here today. I want you to know you're somebody I've always admired and looked up to, not just as an educator, but as a man, someone who, as kids say, who's truly gotten it out of the mud, and who I think continues to pour into the community. And what I always tell people is what I like about Doc is he gives you wise counsel. He never sugarcoats anything. He's always going to be a straight shooter, and I appreciate that. That's what people need. They need to hear the truth, but I also feel that your truth is always showered and shaped with love as well. So I want to thank you for being here. We have a presentation that I'd like for you to see. At this time, we're going to transition to a presentation, and I'd like for Ms. Slate, as we're watching the presentation, if you would, Ms. Slate, would you come to the stage? But we're going to watch the screen now. Yes, sir.
Dr. Willie W. Herenton, a true pioneer, Memphis' first African-American superintendent and mayor, we established the Dr. Willie W. Herenton Legacy in Education Leadership Award. This annual award celebrates individuals reflecting his core principles, transformational leadership, equity, and community advancement in education. We seek K-12 or higher education leaders, advocates, and educators making a tangible difference for underserved communities. Nominees must demonstrate measurable, sustainable change, embodying Dr. Herenton's integrity and resilience. Nominees are evaluated on equity-driven leadership, community engagement, innovative practice, legacy impact, and their unwavering commitment to public education. Nominate a deserving individual today with a letter, bio, and proof of their powerful impact. Honorees will receive a $1,500 professional development grant or school award, a commemorative plaque or medallion, an optional speaking engagement, or feature in district publications. Don't miss this chance to shine a light on educational excellence. Nominate a deserving leader today and help us celebrate those who are boldly building Dr. Herenton's powerful legacy.
Dr. Herenton, would you please come forward? I want to begin by saying I am overwhelmed, and I feel very blessed to have this opportunity to be giving this award to a person who brought me into administration. The one thing that I waited to hear him say was he had what was called a wrecking crew. And I was part of that wrecking crew. As I sat and listened to the things that he had to say, it brought back so many memories. The trials and tribulations of education were massive then, and I hate to say this, Dr. Herenton, but probably even more now. I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to be brought back by Dr. Richmond. For the period that I have been here, I've seen so many dramatic changes. But the foundation that I came in on was built by the man standing immediately next to me. And when I say work, I mean work. I remember him coming into the conference room at 2597 Avery and telling me one night, if you have to go to divorce court, don't name me. There are so many stories we could tell. And when he talks about building an educational foundation, all the way from bringing in preschool programs through deregulation and all of the interventions that we had to put in place, it was really a work. But it was a work of love because we loved what we were doing. We felt that we had the greatest leadership. Now, he would take you in the back room and beat you up, but he wouldn't let anybody beat you up in public. So you could expect when you had done something wrong. I never will forget one night at a board meeting when I just went nope, with a board member. He let me have my way, but then he had his way. We appreciate him for what he has done, for what he continues to do, and what he brings to this whole state of Tennessee, because let me tell you, it was a rough road. When Dr. Richmond was named interim, I sat and tears rolled down my eyes because I had talked to Dr. Herenton and others, and this had been a long-awaited appointment. I want to tell you, you don't know what has gone on behind the scenes to make this happen. Nothing bad, but all good things, with everyone holding and waiting to see what would come next. But when I stand and see these two together, I see not a past generation, but a future generation. I think we're on the move. I think there are great things to be done. And I know we have some of the best leadership in the world to do it. That being said, Dr. Herenton, would you come up? I want to read what this says. Dr. Willie Herenton Education Excellence Award for extraordinary leadership and transformative impact on education in Memphis. And to that, we could add the world. Thank you so much for what you have done.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna say this and I'll sit down. Mrs. Slade mentioned the wrecking crew. I had a cadre, it was very small, of some gifted, committed, dedicated educators. And I had a board that was, I had a board. And what I mean, I just had a board. Dr. Stern was a Harvard graduate from the Harvard Medical School, cardiologist. I had a PhD chemistry professor, University of Memphis. I had a chiropractor. I had 2 lawyers. And then I had Maxine Smith. I had the president of the John Birch Society. So every board meeting, Dr. Richmond, I had to be on my P's and Q's. So I had to have excellent staff people. But I want to say to Mrs. Slate, this lady is gifted. She's knowledgeable. And what I like about her, she's strong. She's real strong. And I like that, okay? So thank you all very much for honoring me. I appreciate you very much.
Testing. Yes. Each and every year, as you all saw, we'll nominate someone for the Dr. Willie Herenton Award. He's the first recipient, but we'll be looking forward to recipients for years to come. Doc, we appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.